Good evening and welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Riches. On the show this evening we have a look at the Crime Reduction Fund created by Matthew Grove, Police and Crime Commissioner for Humberside.
And join me later for the sports news.
But first it's over to James for the news.
Hello, in the headlines today, a new source of funding to help prevent crime in your community. And there's no doubt about what our regional dish is, but eating it's the easy part. Today is a day to appreciate the men who got the fish from the sea. The Police and Crime Commissioner has set up a £1.5 million fund for communities to help themselves reduce crime. Groups can apply for the grants from the fund for items such as fences or CCTV that will help prevent crimes or behaviour causing problems in their neighbourhoods. The money is from savings made by his department, including the sale of his offices at Pacific Exchange on Hull's High Street. More on that from Matthew Grove in tonight's show. Whistleblowers have alleged that 10 patients who died in Grimsby and Scunthorpe hospitals did not receive the appropriate levels of care. This prompted clinical commissioning groups from North Lincolnshire, North East Lincolnshire and East Riding to send a joint formal letter of concern to Northern Lincolnshire and Goole NHS Trust, which operates the two hospitals. The Trust says it's conducting an internal investigation which will conclude in early July. RAF Typhoons, usually based at RAF Coningsby, scrambled to intercept Russian aircraft as part of NATO's mission to protect Baltic airspace. They tracked and monitored the 7 aircraft, which included 1 Tu-22 backfire bomber and 4 Sukhoi fighters, and escorted them on their way. The RAF were deployed in May on a mission to protect NATO airspace above Latvia, Estonia and Lithuania, which don't have their own defence jets. In the last week, they've been scrambled 13 times. The local clinical commissioning group said it would not support any plans to implement a charge to see GPs. The idea of charging £10 per appointment to plug funding gaps in the NHS was mooted by the Royal College of Nurses this week. However, the North East Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group has said the idea would be difficult to administer and could become a barrier to care. Chair Peter Melton also said fining people who don't turn up to appointments would be a bad idea, as often it's the most vulnerable people who need the most help that fail to attend. However, after a report this week revealed a £2 billion deficit in the NHS budget, he's agreed it is helpful to have the debate on new funding options.
I think in principle most doctors, nurses and other health professionals really feel uncomfortable about charging patients for health or social care. They would be really concerned that actually it could become a barrier to receiving the care and attention that people need. The reality is, however, that actually there are payments in the healthcare system. I mean, people do pay for prescription charges, they do pay for site fees, they do pay for dental care, and even sometimes when you have to go to a more remote hospital, one of the frustrations that patients often raise is that actually there are costs incurred with going and accessing care there. So, in principle, we're not keen, we're not supportive, I don't think, but the reality is that there are already some charges in place, either direct or indirect.
Preparations for this year's Beverley Folk Festival are almost over. The 3-day event kicks off tonight at Beverley Racecourse with singer-songwriter Billy Bragg opening the festival at 7:30. Last year's festival brought in a crowd of over 9,000 people after it made its move from Beverley Leisure Centre due to its surge in popularity.
We're certainly growing because we're not only offering music, we've got a wide music offering, but we also offer comedy, literature. We've got Michael Mapergo here, the author of Warhorse, along with Tracy Seward, who is the co-director of the film Warhorse, and he'll be speaking in conversation with her about that experience. That's been sponsored by the Jackson Group, but we're also, an exciting thing on the Sunday, bringing in our own Warhorse, one that's been made locally at the Millers Centre, made out of milk bottles. So real community involvement in a community festival.
And finally, today is Fish Friday, but it's not just a day to eat it, it's a day to think of all the men who have gone out to sea and caught it, including those over the years who've lost their lives. In the run-up to today, shops and restaurants all over the country have been collecting for the Fisherman's Mission, which supports active and retired fishermen and their families, many of whom suffered injuries in the industry.
Like I say, we're giving something back to where it started. This was the birth child of the fishing industry, and I think us, not just ourselves, but other restaurants we will take great pride into making sure we maintain good standards of the fish and give it the respect that it deserves.
That's all from me. Bye for now.
Humberside Police and Crime Commissioner Matthew Grove has announced his Crime Reduction Fund, which aims to provide £1.5 million for funding community projects over the next 4 years. Dan Kemp went to meet him at his HQ, Pacific Exchange in Hull, which he has sold, with the money going into the fund.
Can you tell me briefly what the Crime Commissioner's Fund is?
It's a pot of money that I've been able to build by making savings from the cost of the former police authority. I'm substantially cheaper to administer than the former police authority. I've saved at least £300,000 per year, and I've also done what I said I would do, I promised I would do on my election, which is to sell this very opulent and extravagant building that I inherited from the police authority. It's a listed building, very spacious, oak panelling, custom-made carpets and leather Chesterfields. It is inappropriately grand for me, and it's in the wrong location. I want to move to a much more modest building, and that has liberated another £350,000. So I now have what will amount to about £1.5 million over the next 4 to 5 years. And I am now doing what I promised I would do, and I'm investing that into the community to help prevent crime. And I'm relying on the wisdom of the public. I have an absolute faith in the public's ability to identify cost-effective ways to prevent crime.
Do you represent more of a saving to the taxpayer than maybe they perceive?
Their perception was even worse than that. They didn't realise that there was an existing administration overseeing the running of the police. That's why that they saw that I was an additional cost. I wasn't. I was simply replacing an existing function that was so invisible they didn't know it existed. But my remit's far wider than the police authority. The police authority purely oversaw the administration of policing. I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner, and more than half my job is looking at those areas outside of policing. It's the prisons, it's the criminal justice system, it's probation. Those are areas where I spend an awful lot of my time, and where there are great opportunities to actually also reduce crime. Most crime is committed by people who are reoffending, who've committed crime before and go on to commit many, many more crimes. If I can work hard to help to reduce reoffending, it will have a big impact on the overall crime figures in this area.
Who can access the fund, and how can they go about getting access to it?
They basically go online, go onto my website, and the application forms are there. We're trying to get through the technical problems so they can actually apply online. I'm not looking for the best applications, I'm looking for the best projects. I'm hoping that this fund is very much targeted at smaller community groups with small pots of money that will get a huge return for their community. So it's the best projects I'm looking for, not necessarily the best written bid.
People may worry that this money would go mainly towards the areas that are struggling maybe economically and with crime. Would the places that are better off and don't have as many crime issues, would they also benefit from it?
Well, I hope so. I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner covering the whole of northern Lincolnshire and East Yorkshire, all its 900,000 residents. There are some very, very significant crime hotspots in small geographical areas, and obviously I will be looking for applications from there. But we also have victims of crime in some of the quieter rural areas, and if there is a crime problem in their area, I will absolutely be looking to work with them to help solve that. I've already done it. We have some fantastic farm watch and country watch schemes running across the whole of the Force area. And I went to a meeting of all the groups, and they had a real need for signs, because signs are a big part of that deterrent effect that tells criminals don't bother coming here to commit your crimes, go elsewhere. And they were talking amongst themselves, how can we get the money and can we apply here? And I simply was able to put up my hand and say, Mr. Chairman, I will fund those. And that's what I did. I spent £4,800, provided them with the money, but I also gave them access to the prison workshop, and we had prisoners produce those signs. So it was a real double benefit there, that the very people who potentially are committing the crimes in the past are producing the signs that are telling criminals now, don't come here, we are watching you and we are ready, to drive you out.
Any other examples of when the public have come to you and asked for help to reduce the crime in their area?
I spend a lot of my time doing street surgeries. I'm the servant of the 900,000 residents of this area, and I make sure that I am hearing from them directly. So I go out and I listen to them. And I was on a bus surgery with a local ward councillor, and the chairman of an allotment society came onto the bus and was telling me how they had been absolutely devastated by a wave of crime on their allotments. There was about 60 plus allotment holders, and they were having a large number of crimes, 20 or 30 crimes in a couple of months, and it was ruining their hobby. And I had a discussion with her, and all they needed was some fairly low-level security devices, basically some discrete cameras and some very undiscreet, very big signage saying security measures are in place here. And all I had to assist them with was about £300. They are also putting some money from their own society in, they're putting their labour in, and what we will see is a significant reduction in the number of crimes, which improves their life, improves their hobby, but actually it saves the police a huge amount of money. Every crime we prevent from happening with taking common sense precautions and putting in place suitable measures is a crime that the police don't have to deal with. We have a finite amount of resources in policing. We have a finite number of police officers and PCSOs. And I want to make sure that every crime that can be prevented is prevented, so they can concentrate their time on the very serious crimes, the very damaging crimes that are more difficult to prevent.
And now it's back over to Dan for the sport.
Thank you, Hugh. The fixtures have been released for the new football season. Hull City opened their Premier League campaign in London against newly promoted side Queen's Park Rangers on August the 16th. Their first home game comes a week later against Stoke City. Boxing Day sees the Tigers travel to Wearside to play Sunderland, with a home clash against Nigel Pearson's Leicester City following 2 days later. City play host to Manchester United on the final day of the season. That game will be 6 years to the day since Hull lost 1-0 to United when they survived their first ever season in the Premier League. Scunthorpe United travel to the county ground Swindon for their opening day game and play their first game at Glanford Park the week after against Preston North End. Christmas week sees Rochdale visit on Boxing Day, and the Iron travel to Bramall Lane 2 days later to face last season's FA Cup semi-finalists Sheffield United. They finish the season away at local rivals Doncaster Rovers on Saturday, May the 2nd. Grimsby Town and North Ferriby United's fixtures are yet to be released. On the transfer front, it appears one of Hull's top targets, out-of-contract Manchester City centre-half Julian Lescott, is in high demand. The suggestion in recent days was that the former England international was set to sign for the Tigers, but rumours have also been circulating suggesting that West Bromwich Albion now lead the race for the defender. Scunthorpe United have dipped into the transfer market with a move for free agent Neil Bishop. 32-year-old Bishop left Blackpool at the end of the season after making 35 appearances for the Tangerines last time out. He has signed a 2-year deal. In Rugby League, the Catalan Dragons host Hull FC in Perpignan on Saturday, but they may be without one of their leading performers, Liam Watts. He may miss the visit to the south of France after losing his passport, and the club are unsure whether he will be able to get a replacement at such short notice. Hull Kingston Rovers are also on the road but face a much shorter trip to Bradford. Whilst their opposition are now without a coach following the sacking of Francis Cummings, talks are now ongoing to renew the contract of Robins boss Craig Sandercock. The pair clash tonight at 8 p.m. at the Providence Stadium. This weekend, thousands of people will head to Hull Marina for the P1 Powerboat Superstock Championship. Many established names will be competing alongside Hull's very own offering, Hull Speed Ahead. A practice session will start at midday tomorrow, and the first race is at 2:30. Other activities to take place include a beer festival, live music and a fun fair. That's all for the sport. Back to you, Hugh.
Well, that's all from us for this time. Contact us in the usual ways, please, through Facebook or Twitter or via phone on 01472 315561 if you have a story for us. Join me again next week when Anthony Fitzgerald from the North Lincolnshire and Goole Health Trust looks back at the week's news. Until then, goodbye.